Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and you may have seen the article in the news this weekend about a Reform UK advisor with pro-Nazi and pro-Putin views, somewhat at odds with the vast majority of the British public, that we should not have fought against Nazi Germany, that we should not help Ukraine defend themselves against Russian invasion. And for a party run by a man who was reported to be very sympathetic to the Nazis in his youth at least, and who has been meeting Nazis socially in recent years, you would think Reform UK would want to avoid being too obviously on the side of these groups. But then I remembered something else. A few months ago, it was being reported that Nazi groups in Britain wanted to infiltrate Reform UK in order to push it into even more extreme territory. Is this latest report a sign they've succeeded? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So the idea of infiltrating a party which looks like it could form a government by the far right is not a fanciful theory. We've seen it in modern times. We witnessed infiltration of the Tories under David Cameron by UKIP, and we saw where that ended up. Reform UK are already a much more extreme version of the post-Brexit Tories, who seem to have almost none of the redeeming qualities of the John Major era Conservatives left at all now. And yet, as hard as it may be to believe, there are much more extreme groups and people out there than Reform UK and Nigel Farage. There are people out there who want anyone who isn't white ejected from Britain, and they are comfortable with the idea of using extreme force to achieve it. And given that there are far-right groups more extreme than Reform UK, it makes sense they would want to infiltrate Farage's party. 2025 has seen the party lead in the voting intention polls. Many people think they could win the next election. I would certainly say that even if that doesn't happen, it's probably now a case of when, not if, Reform UK form a government at some point, unless we make radical changes to our political system. So, of course, more extreme groups would want to get their people into key positions within Reform UK while it's still malleable, in order to steer them further in the direction they'd like to see the country take. The motivation to infiltrate Reform UK is immense, and it's not like Farage's posse are good at background checks. So have the BNP and their ilk already taken over Reform UK? So to understand the concerns today, you have to remember the politics of yesterday. At its peak, the British National Party represented a brand of politics that the vast majority of Britain rejected. Its policies were designed to divide communities along racial lines, and its leaders became notorious for defending ideologies that had absolutely no place in a modern, tolerant, liberal society. The party's eventual collapse was seen as a victory for these mainstream values. It was crushed electorally. Membership collapsed, leaders faded from the public eye. Most people assumed the ideology had been defeated. But of course, toxic ideas have a long half-life, lingers in the shadows, waits for a new vehicle to re-emerge. For years, the question was, where did all those people go? Turns out they may have just been waiting for an invitation. In the turbulence of modern British politics, some now think they've found one. The call, when it came, was direct. A few months ago, prominent far-right figures, David Clues and Mark Collett, both with past links to the BNP, publicly urged their supporters to join Reform UK. This wasn't just about voting, it was a call for strategic entryism, a deliberate effort to join the party, gain influence, push it further towards their own extremist views. In a joint statement, they reportedly laid out their plan to exert a significant level of influence on the direction of reform. They encouraged their followers to become active organisers, to seek candidacies at every level of government, embedding themselves within the party's machinery. Collett, who's a notorious neo-Nazi, described the goal as using reform as a wrecking ball to advance their agenda. The message was, don't just support reform, become reform. The aim was to shape it from the inside into a vessel for a political project the public had already rejected before. Now, for an infiltration strategy to work, the door has to be open. At Reform UK, critics argue that a series of failures in the party's internal processes left it vulnerable. Throughout the 24 election campaign, Reform was hit by a load of scandals involving candidates who'd posted hateful, racist content online. Nigel Farage assured people that there was a rigorous vetting system, but journalists and campaign groups like Hope Not Hate repeatedly uncovered offensive material. Farage then blamed the vetting company for the failures, claiming the party had been stitched up. Then, just a couple of months ago, the party announced it was introducing a new common sense approach to vetting that would be more proportionate than before. So they sent out an email to members stating that those who'd previously failed the vetting process were encouraged to reapply. In other words, they were toning down their vetting process. And the failed applicants would be given priority. Now, for those seeking entry, critics were saying, well, hang on, this isn't just an open door, this is a red carpet. Farage wanted huge numbers of members for PR purposes, so we can claim, oh, we've got all these members, right? To make it sound like there's this massive party. So he just wanted the numbers. He didn't care about the consequences of not being too careful where those members came from. So the strategy appears to be on the radar of anti-fascist campaigners now. David Clues claimed he already has sympathisers inside Reform UK holding positions, including as branch chairs on official candidate lists. That suggests a concerted effort to capture parts of the party's local power structures. So Hope Not Hate have warned about these risks, with their director of campaigns, Georgie Laming, stating, this is a party that's opening the door to hate. Evidence of these vulnerabilities repeatedly surfaced during last year's election. There was like one candidate, Grant Sinclair Armstrong, resigned after it revealed he'd written a blog post encouraging people to vote for the BNP. Raymond Saint dropped after his past membership in the BNP was exposed. Reform's official line is that those individuals are not welcome and that they must have lied during the vetting. Because to be fair, you know, when you fill out a form for Reform UK, you do have to state you haven't been a member of groups like the BNP. But the number of cases like that has raised questions about the party's ability to police its own ranks, or even how serious they are about policing their own ranks. Is it more important to Farage to just claim to more moderate voters that they're shutting these people out than it is to shut these people out? And it goes beyond a few candidates as well. The policy platform of Reform, which is a hardline stance on immigration, a pledge to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, and populist rhetoric putting, the people against a corrupt elite, that aligns with the modern populist right. It makes it an attractive destination for these figures. And this reported infiltration is not happening in isolation either. It's part of a wider international ecosystem of the far right amplifying these sort of messages. You've got figures like Tommy Robinson, who's supported amongst many groups outside of Britain. He continues to hold demonstrations that energise the movement when he's not in prison or on a 6-month holiday. And this ecosystem is amplified by powerful online figures. So Hope Not Hate identify Elon Musk, owner of Twitter, as an influential actor whose platform provides a massive boost to these narratives. It allows them to spread far beyond traditional audiences. Farage also benefits from international connections, including his friendship with Donald Trump and his sort of team. That further embeds his movement within a global network of right-wing populism. And that creates a feedback loop where the party's rhetoric energises a radical base. That base in turn pushes the party towards more extreme positions. Nigel Farage presents himself as the respectable face of this movement, but he's leading a party with increasingly radical elements in his ranks. The consequence of this could extend beyond one political party. The State of Hate 2025, the report from Hope Not Hate, described the events of the past year as the most serious far-right threat in Britain for generations. After securing 5 seats, 4 million votes at the last election, Reform achieved what Hope Not Hate has called the most successful result for a far-right party at the ballot box in British history. And while mainstream sources describe the party as right-wing populist, other groups are more direct with the far-right label. The entry of figures with extremist backgrounds, literally Nazi backgrounds, and the adoption of their talking points are acts of political normalisation. Ideas that were once considered beyond the pale are now presented as legitimate mainstream opinion. And that risks shifting the entire political landscape even further to the far right. The danger is that Reform UK acts as a Trojan horse. By masquerading as a party of common sense change, it provides cover for individuals with much more sinister agendas to gain a foothold in the corridors of power. The ultimate result would be a permanent realignment of British politics, with extremist views no longer on the fringes, but an accepted part of the debate. And given how shit the left and socially progressive groups are at communicating, it's a debate that is only going one way as things stand. The evidence compiled by journalists and anti-fascist groups points to a clear pattern. You've got far-right figures openly calling for their followers to enter and influence Reform UK. The party's own actions, from its leaders' rhetoric to its loosening of vetting rules, have facilitated that entryism. The result is a party where sympathisers of a toxic ideology are in some cases gaining footholds. Those people will now be in some local councils. And this isn't just politics as usual, it's what anti-fascist campaigners describe as a calculated campaign to drag fringe extremism into the mainstream, using Nigel Farage's party as the vehicle. The future of Britain's political landscape can depend on whether the public sees this movement for what its critics say it is. For me, I have two hopes for this. The first is that people watch the unfolding MAGA horror in America and that eventually there'll be a tipping point where people in Britain decide they don't want to risk the same here. The second is that voices on the progressive left stop pissing about with their middle-class bullshit, pretending it's working-class concerns, and start talking to the people they claim to represent and really explain what's happening in a coordinated, calm, rational tone. More a hope than an expectation, but there you go. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind-the-scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.